modern love story. Boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, boy marries girl.
Lorena Bobbit goes on trial for maliciously wounding her husband.
She has admitted emasculating her husband last June.
But a lot of people found out through your case kind of how domestic violence works. For you, you were very innocent in your first relationship. I had a similar experience in my first relationship. And when the abuse first started, I kept thinking, what am I doing wrong? Clearly, I must be doing something wrong to make him angry. You had the same thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what I always tell myself, a lot of things happen because we don't know the victims. And as a survivor of domestic abuse, I didn't know and I didn't see those red flags that, or whatever trigger my ex-husband or my abusive partner to actually, do the things he did. And I have no idea how to, basically I was walking in eggshells during, there's always a lot of things that why we blame ourselves as victims. And that's the common thing for a victim or a survivor to go through, what did I did wrong? What did I did to cause him to abuse me? And
the thing is, there is absolutely nothing you can do. You can't be prettier, you can't be smarter, you can't be thinner, you can't be big. There's nothing you can do. What had been your experience with domestic violence? Had you heard about it? Had you seen it anywhere before?
No, I have I never saw anything. I didn't know anything. You have to remember when I got married with John, I was 19 years old and I didn't have any experience in life. I was very naive. I was very young. I never see any abuse in my family. I never really experienced anybody. My friends never really told me about any abusive. So I never really, I couldn't compare anything like that. I always thought that it was only me suffering.
You don't want to tell anybody because one, you're embarrassed. And the other thing is, you don't want to make them angry. So were there times that you just wanted to blurt it out to somebody to help you? Or you thought, can I call the police? What was that moment like for you?
I was ashamed to say anything. I was very embarrassed. I was not wanted to be open to anybody. I just kept it to myself. I was just basically ashamed and scared. I'm scared that he's gonna call the police to deport me or send me to a deportation to another country because I was an immigrant.
June 23rd, 1993, that moment where you snapped. You just could not take it anymore. And what you did was, it was kind of a symbol or a tool of his abuse that you just said, I'm gonna get rid of.
Well, we have to remember also that, like I said, there is years of abuse.
And he slapped me on my face, he pulled my hair, and he squeezed my face.
It wasn't me that day, that night, whatever happened, that was not me. I was just basically broken.
After it all happened, you were re-victimized, really, because people were asking all sorts of questions. I want to go through a couple of questions that people oftentimes ask a victim of domestic abuse. The first one is, well, why didn't you just leave?
If you are not a person who experienced domestic abuse, basically, you just don't know. To me, leaving is a process, it's not an event. And it takes several times for a woman actually to leave their abusive relationship.
And oftentimes, if you have children and you don't have a job, you don't have means, you don't have family to go to, you have no place to go. In 1993, there weren't that many places to go in so-called modern times. There still aren't that many places to go. And we need to flip that script. Instead of why don't you leave, why don't you make him stop? Why doesn't he stop, right?
We also don't have, and we're talking about 27 years ago, we don't have the resources that we didn't have, the resources that we have now. We didn't have, cell phones, or the internet wasn't available to many times. Oh, it wasn't the internet, but it wasn't like it is now, social media. The resources that we have compared to what we have then, it was nothing like this. So now we have the ability to actually, call 911, or even when I called 911 at that time, the dispatcher didn't know how to help a victim of domestic abuse, and shelters were not many times. Even now in my community of 500,000 people, they're almost, there's only one shelter and 18 beds. I mean, how could you explain that? I mean, before it's even worse.
After this all happened, it was interesting to watch it unfold, because you were the victim of the abuse, but the way that it was seen by a lot of news stories, even comedic sketches like Saturday Night Live, they made John the victim.
John, When Lorena cut off your penis, how did that make you feel?
It really, it was very hurtful to see those the cruel jokes about me, and and I said, but I can't believe this is something serious. How can people laugh about a domestic abuse person who experienced rape by her husband or sexual assault? It was just devastated.
As sensational as this case was, when the dust settled, there were changes that were made because of it. One of those things in many communities, when police showed up to a 911 call, they didn't just say, hey, you got to work it out. They could do more about it. You also founded Lorena's Red Wagon organization. What does that group do?
Yes, so it was Lorena's Red Wagon. Now it's called Lorena Gallo Foundation, and the mission is basically to help educate the community and at scholastic levels, and basically educate about domestic abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and sexual assault, and that's what I do now.
You got a chance to see some people at the Houston Area Women's Center. What is it like for you to connect with them and see in their eyes you are not alone and there are people who are fighting on your behalf?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, that's exactly what I do. I go to the shelters. I have the opportunity to go to the Houston area Women's Center and talk to the clients there, the people who are there. They were amazing. I mean, I wish I can actually hug them and say, look, I mean, we believe you.
There's a 4-part docuseries that retells the story, but it reclaims the narrative. And that story is just as important today as it has ever been. But was it cathartic for you to be able to look at that story told in more through your eyes and in the right way, in your opinion, of what all happened?
Absolutely. I feel vindicated because my story was sensationalized before by the media and by people who didn't understand about domestic violence or domestic abuse. To be able to reclaim my story, it was an opportunity to tell people exactly what happened, and to be able to have the opportunity to talk about it. It made me feel even more free. I
go to the shelters and I talk to these women. Every one of them wants so desperately for their abuser to apologize. They feel like that needs to be part of their healing. And I think a lot of them are used to the apology, then the abuse again, the apology, then abuse again. So sometimes that apology doesn't really mean very much, but to understand that their apology sometimes will not come and cannot get in the way of your own healing. Has John ever apologized to you, and did you think that he really meant that?
He did apologize before, but I always thought that his apology was never sincere. I kind of struggled with that, with this. I was talking to, a friend of mine earlier, and, to me, for me to move on in life, I know that I have to forgive him, but I will never ever forget what he did to me. With
the women I speak to, and you're included in that for sure. I know myself at one point, when I was able to get out is when I realized that I was more than that person ever saw me as.
And when you're able to actually tell the story, like I said before, is when you're able to actually take the steps to the healing process. And it's a long process. I was never, be the comfortable person or the confident person that I am today. But those experiences make me also the person who I am today. And today I'm an advocate, I'm an activist, and I'm able to speak freely every time about my story and share my story with the whole world.
Lorena, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.